I need it, because I can't do anything and get to anything. And so the person who was the president last year is, you know, deadbeat off and has left and gone and traveling the world and, you know, oh, okay, whatever. So I mean, it helps provide some of that kind of stability, so I encourage you to use it, if nothing else, for some of those regards. And this events is where you would take, as I was mentioning about events, you know, you would go in, you would select events and put that event information in there, and as I said, it would, in the future, begin that domino. For now, it's just a great way to market and promote your events. So, yeah, question?
So as long as you're registered as an officer, you can manage the page yourself?
Correct. So there's like a primary contact that typically is generated by the group through MapWorks. So whoever does that, like re-registration of the group, becomes that primary contact. And we can always sort of help you if you've kind of got some issues with that within your organization or group. Let us know. We can kind of help from our side manage some of those kinds of things as well. But yeah, so there's some privileges and permissions that can be determined based on your position. So for like your, as everybody who's in the organization, you can assign positions to them. You know, president, vice president, those kinds of things. You can create your own. There are some default ones that we have in there, but then those access levels to the page can be determined as well based on that position. Yeah. Which leads me to just events. I'll sort of address that real quick as we sort of shift into some more form-related things and policy procedure kind of stuff related to the office. Of course, registering an event is, I think, what a lot of our student groups do. That kind of becomes that sort of, you know, thing they've got to work through. So just sort of a real quick, and I'll go into some more detail when we do sort of an event planning session later on. But essentially, event registration, reserving a room, things like that really starts in our office by filling out our campus event planning sheet, which, you know, has some other addendum type forms that might be filled on based on what's going on. As Marvin mentioned earlier, it requires an advisor's signature, which is an important part of our process. And then usually our office becomes a resource in terms of like that event consultation. Like, oh, you know, you'll put like 500 people here. If you put 500 people on this form, if you really think you're going to get 500 people, that's great. But be prepared to have some university security costs and some things like that that could come into play. So let us sort of work with you to provide some of that consultation. Working with the University Center, a lot of our events and activities occur here in this building, and so working with them on that process sort of, you know, help make sure that the details and things are addressed. And then ultimately there's sort of like an event confirmation that is done. So that's sort of on the front end, some very like general steps about event reservation. We will talk in so much more detail about that later on. Posting policies, so policies and procedures. Who's hung up a banner on campus, a poster? Who's hung up a poster on campus? Never hung up a poster on campus? Oh my gosh. Poster, you hung up a poster?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, there's this document that we have about posting locations, which if you have not seen before, I encourage you to utilize. We will talk more about that later, but generally, posting and advertising and marketing on campus is something that we encourage, we want you to do. There's a few things that we require, like a little white box at the bottom of it for our stamp and some of those kinds of things. But you know, essentially things can only be posted in approved posting locations. And like I said, we will talk more about that in some detail later, but posting policy is something to be aware of. We spend a lot of time on that. Let's be real, we spend a lot of time talking about hanging up posters in our office and stamping things. On-campus accounts, how many of you have an organization that uses your on-campus 401 account? Good. Any of you guys use it? No? If you don't, you are more than welcome. We would encourage you to use it. Of course, a lot of our organizations and groups have the Wells Fargo account or something like that off campus, and that's fine. I will say that I think, you know, in terms of some checks and balances and things like that, this provides a very, I will call it somewhat old-fashioned system. But at the same time, it's a relatively well-managed, secure system. So what these accounts are, just in case you're not familiar, these are essentially just holding accounts the university has. So the university has these accounts that are set up for student organizations and groups. The university doesn't really do anything with it, except the money comes in, sits there, and if you request to go out, it goes out. So it really is a holding account. If for some reason the organization or group sort of vanishes, the university basically, it eventually will end up out of that account, and it goes into another account that just kind of sits there. And if an organization or group returns, we can see if they had any money when the group became inactive and re-establish those funds. So if any of you are part of an organization or group that was inactive one time and you're reestablishing it, let us know. Maybe you got some money you didn't know about. So, but those accounts are, and the nice thing about it is because of those kinds of things. You know, if you were at Wells Fargo, you would have this sort of like fees and the account could get closed if it was inactive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We just try to take and sort of manage some of those kinds of things for the group. You'll see primarily we have a sheet in our office that is a sort of a tips, and it's in this packet I will give you here in just a moment. That sort of is like kind of all those things you know if you're new in terms of doing a payment approval voucher, and so that document on the right, that's what you use to take and process and request a payment. You need to get cash out or issue a check. So that's sort of typically how people will get money out of those accounts. You can go and request cash, but you can also take and request a check, and the university will issue a check. So if you had a vendor maybe you were doing business with or something like that, instead of having to get $500 in cash out that you were going to pay someone for DJing an event, you could have a check issued as well. So some of those kinds of things are nice to make sure that some checks and balances are being followed. An important thing to keep in mind with all of those in terms of payment approval vouchers and things like that is that, you know, as you fill this out, there are quite a few things that you need to be sort of advised of, and that's what this document on the left is. You know, sort of making sure that the right information is in the right box. If any of you have done this and you get over to the bursar's office and it's not filled out correctly, they give it back to you. They won't do anything with it. So it's got to be filled out accurately and correctly. So when the time comes to fill out, and if you want help, feel free to come by our office and we'll be happy to take and do that with you. But that cheat sheet is a good document to sort of help you walk through that as well. The other piece that's attached to that is your signature cards, and so as an organization or a group, there are signature cards that you have that basically you need to do at the beginning of every year if you have any officers transition or change over. So it requires an advisor's signature and any of your officers that would be on that signature card as well. So that's something, if you have not done, I encourage you to do it here at the beginning of the year as well. You know, so all of these payment approval vouchers require at least 2 signatures and an advisor's signature on it, depending upon the account. So, you know, it's a great way to kind of make sure that you don't have one person who sort of starts, you know, trying to spend money sort of willy-nilly without some more authority or authorization by the group. Program Assistance Fund. So through Student Congress, there's what's called the Program Assistance Fund. It is supplemental funding for registered student organizations. So anybody familiar with the Program Assistance Fund?
A little bit.
You know, we haven't done a very good job promoting that. So it is supplemental funding for you as an organization or group. It is primarily meant to support organizations, events, and activities on campus, or student travel related to your organization. So now, the important piece to keep in mind is supplemental and assist. So it will not fully fund things. It requires an organization to still also be willing to pay for something, whether it be that travel for a conference or a training or an event or an activity on campus. So that's done through Student Congress, through the Student Congress Parliamentarian, sc-parl, UTA.edu. And when you go to that student organization's website, you can find some details about deadlines and stuff like that as well. But it is sort of a year-round process. So it is not one of those kinds of things you got to have it in by October. Decision is made in November, and that's it. Those meetings occur monthly to be able to take and review those requests. I think a lot of money usually goes unrequested, so please make sure you take and do that. Look at your events and activities you're trying to do, and look at the criteria and see if what you're trying to do meets some of those criteria, and definitely take advantage of it. The next thing I'll start talking more about, as I mentioned, printing. So as a student organization, there's $100 of available allowed per year for you to use printing services through our office. So the caveat to that is it really is things we end up printing them through our office for you. So on our website, there's a printing request form. You fill it out, you attach the file, we print it, you come pick it up.